You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instantly know something's horribly wrong? When the air feels thick and everyone's frozen like statues. That's exactly what happened when a highly trained warrior walked into his hometown diner, expecting nothing more than breakfast with his mom. Instead, he witnessed something that would make his blood run cold, and what he did next. Well, let me just say, justice has never been served quite like this. But before we dive in, I've got to ask, where in the world are you watching this from right now? Seriously, drop your country or city in the comments. I absolutely love seeing how these stories connect with people across the globe. Now, let's get into what really went down that morning. Picture this. It's an ordinary Tuesday morning in a small American town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the local diner serves the same breakfast menu it's had for 30 years, and where people generally mind their own business. The place was packed, the day booths filled with regulars sipping coffee, the smell of bacon and pancakes hanging in the air. The usual morning chatter creating that comfortable background noise. Then, without warning, everything changed in an instant. A 78-year-old woman, someone's mother, someone's grandmother, was suddenly struck across the face with such brutal force that she crumpled to the floor like a rag doll. The sound of her body hitting those cold tiles echoed through the entire restaurant. And you know what happened next? Absolutely nothing. Not a single person moved. Not one voice spoke up. Everyone just sat there, paralyzed by shock and fear, watching as this elderly woman lay trembling on the ground. Standing over her was the reason for their silence. A massive brute of a man, radiating arrogance and menace, grinning like he'd just won some twisted victory. This wasn't his first time terrorizing people in this town. Oh no. He'd built his reputation on intimidation, on making sure everyone knew he was untouchable. He'd convinced himself he was some kind of local king, free to do whatever he wanted to, whoever he wanted, because nobody had ever dared challenge him. But here's the thing about bullies. They always make one critical miscalculation. They assume today will be just like yesterday. They assume no one stronger will ever walk through that door. This particular bully, he had absolutely no idea that the woman he just assaulted had raised a son who'd spent years being trained by the United States military to handle threats far more dangerous than him. And that son, he was literally seconds away from entering that diner with a four-legged partner who was equally trained, equally ready, and absolutely loyal. The door opened. No dramatic entrance, no announcement, just a simple chime from the bell above. A man walked in wearing casual clothes, nothing flashy. Gray hoodie, worn jeans, boots covered in road dust. Beside him moved a stunning dog, black and tanned coat gleaming, ears alert, eyes scanning everything with professional precision. This wasn't just any pet. This was a working dog, a Belgian Malinois, built for combat operations and trained to protect. The man's name was Jack, and he'd traveled a long way to surprise his mother with a visit. Maybe take her out for her favorite pancakes, catch up on life, enjoy some peace after months deployed overseas. The absolute last thing he expected was to walk into a nightmare. But warriors have this sixth sense about danger. Before his eyes even registered what was happening, his body knew. And his dog, the animal stopped instantly, every muscle tensing, ears locked forward on a target. Jack followed that stare, and when his brain finally processed what he was seeing, his own mother, on the floor, holding her face, tears streaming down her cheeks, while some overgrown thug stood over her, looking proud, something inside him went ice cold. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply moved forward with that eerie calm that comes from years of high-stakes training. "Mom," he said, just that one word, spoken so quietly you'd almost miss it. But there was something in his voice, something that made people's spines tingle. The bully turned around slowly, probably expecting another terrified local. Instead, he saw a younger man with eyes that held no fear whatsoever. Zero. And that dog beside him, that dog was staring at him like he was prey. Well, the brute sneered, trying to maintain his dominance. Looks like the old lady called for backup. The dog's growl started low, rumbling from deep in his chest like distant thunder. Several customers actually flinched at the sound. Jack knelt beside his mother, his touch gentle despite the fury that must have been burning inside him. "Did he hit you?" he asked softly. She tried to shake her head, tried to downplay it because that's what mothers do, right? They try to protect their children even when they're the ones who need protecting. "Don't do anything foolish," she whispered, her voice shaking. The bully laughed, actually laughed. "Yeah, listen to Mommy, soldier boy. Sit your behind down like everyone else here, unless you want to join her on the floor." Jack stood up. He wasn't massive, wasn't trying to look intimidating, but there was something about the way he carried himself perfectly balanced, utterly controlled, radiating a quiet confidence that only comes from real training, real combat experience. His dog stood beside him, coiled tight, waiting for just one signal. "Sit," Jack said quietly. The dog obeyed instantly, dropping into position, but those eyes never left the threat, tracking him like a laser sight. Jack took a step forward. "You're going to apologize to my mother." The bully's face twisted into mock surprise. "Apologize? To her?" "She bumped into me. I was just teaching her some respect." "You teach fear?" Jack replied, his voice level. "There's a major difference." The brute puffed up, trying to reclaim his authority. "You must be that Navy son she's always bragging about around town. What exactly are you planning to do, hero? Give me a lecture about respect." Then he made his biggest mistake. He reached out and jabbed his finger into Jack's chest, hard, trying to provoke him, trying to start something. The entire diner gasped, because everyone knew what happened to people who challenged this man. Everyone had seen it before, but Jack, he didn't even blink, didn't flinch. His dog, the animal rose back to his feet, every hair along his spine standing up like razors. "I'm giving you one opportunity," Jack said calmly. "Walk away." Right. The bully smirked, convinced he still had control. "Nah, I think I'll put you on the ground next to her instead. Now, here's where years of elite military training kick in." See, Jack had operated in war zones most people only see in movies. He'd trained for situations exactly like this in dozens of countries, against opponents who were actually trying to kill him. Dealing with one small-town bully, that was child's play. The brute threw a punch slow, telegraphed, sloppy. Jack's hand moved faster than most people could track, catching the man's wrist mid-swing with absolute precision. One smooth twist, using the attacker's own momentum against him. And suddenly this unstoppable bully was down on his knees, his face contorted in pain. People started standing up from their booths, shocked, unable to believe what they were witnessing. "Let go." The man howled, trying to pull free. "That's not my decision anymore," Jack said quietly. "That's up to Titan." The dog stepped forward on command, lips pulling back to reveal very serious teeth, releasing a growl so deep and primal that it seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. The bully went completely still, fear finally replacing that arrogant smirk. Jack leaned in close, his voice low but clear. "You struck an elderly woman. You've been throwing your weight around this town because you assumed nobody stronger would ever challenge you. But you forgot something critical." He tightened his grip, just slightly. "There's always someone better trained, more controlled, and far less afraid than you." The dog's growl intensified. The man whimpered. "Fear keeps people silent," Jack said, louder now, making sure every person in that diner could hear him. "But courage wakes up the entire room." That's when something remarkable happened. A woman, the diner's manager, who'd been watching from behind the counter, finally spoke up. Her voice was shaky but determined. "He's been doing this to us for years," she said. "Nobody stops him. We've tried reporting him to authorities. He just threatens anyone who tries." "Shut your mouth," the bully hissed. "Titan," Jack commanded. The dog lunged forward now to attack, but close enough that the man could feel his breath, hot and threatening. close enough to understand exactly what those jaws could do. The bully fell backward, scrambling. Oh, pretense of toughness completely evaporated. "You will never threaten anyone in this town again," Jack stated. "Not a question. Fact." His mother finally managed to stand, leaning on a nearby table. "Jack, that's enough," she said, her voice still trembling. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. And something shifted in his expression. Because this wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about proving how tough he was. This was about the woman who'd raised him alone, who'd worked multiple jobs to support his dreams, who'd sacrificed everything so he could serve his country. This was about making sure she never felt that fear again. He released the man's wrist and stood tall. "Get out," he ordered. "And the next time you even think about raising your hand to anyone, I want you to remember this exact moment. Remember how powerless you felt. Remember that feeling." The bully scrambled to his feet, cradling his twisted wrist, and stumbled toward the door. No tough talk now. No threats. Just a pathetic retreat. The diner stayed silent for maybe 5 seconds after he left. Then a teenage kid who'd been hiding in a corner booth whispered, "Thank you, sir." And suddenly the whole place erupted. Applause. People crying with relief. Strangers hugging. The tension that had gripped this community for years just released, like someone had finally opened a valve. Jack's mother took his arm gently. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly. He looked down at her, his expression warm despite everything. "Mom, you're my mission. You always have been." The dog nudged her hand gently with his nose, as if offering his own comfort. People started approaching their table, thanking Jack, petting the dog, sharing stories about all the times they'd wanted to stand up but were too scared. One elderly gentleman had tears streaming down his face. "You reminded us," he said, "that we don't have to let fear control our lives." Jack nodded. "Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you act anyway, despite the fear." As they finally sat down together in a booth, mother and son, reunited under circumstances neither had anticipated, she whispered, "Your father would be so proud of you." Jack smiled, his hand resting on his dog's head. "I really hope so." Outside, morning sunlight warmed the quiet street. Inside, every single person felt lighter somehow, like a shadow that had been hanging over them for years had finally been lifted. Like they could breathe again. And that elderly widow, who just minutes before had been lying on a cold tile floor, humiliated and hurt, she sat tall now, surrounded by a community that was no longer afraid, all because her son, the one she'd raised. Right? The one she'd taught about honor and protection, had walked through that door at exactly the right moment. Look, this story hit millions of people right in the heart. If it hit yours too, so melao. Drop a like, comment yes down below, and definitely subscribe because we've got tons more incredible stories like this one coming your way. Remember, courage isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about standing up when it matters most. See you in the next one.